Hey everybody, today is Sunday, February 4th, 2024, and we are here in the town of Lititz, Pennsylvania, a very historical town. Lots of things to do, lots of things to see here. There are museums, there are factory tours, but today we're not here for a museum. We're not here for a factory tour. We are here for a bit of history that sits right over there, a bit of Revolutionary War history. And as somebody who is quite fascinated by the Revolutionary War and the history of the Revolutionary War, I want to get as much of this in as I possibly can while I'm still here for the next month and a half or so in Pennsylvania. And there is something I have been wanting to see for a while now. Lititz is about an hour or so away from my house, so I've been wanting to come out here but been kind of putting it off because it was such a far drive. But today I figured we'd come out here and we'd finally take a look at this. It's a little chilly out today. I'm gonna be mumbling, I'm gonna be freezing, I'm gonna be shaking once again, but as long as I'm in the sun, it's honestly not too bad. Anyway, been wanting to come out here and to see this, so I'm braving the cold once again to take a look at something pretty interesting. Again, a piece of Revolutionary War history that sits right here in the middle of the town. Kind of weird too, because it's surrounded by houses and offices and whatnot, but sitting right here on the other side of this wall is, again, a very interesting piece of Revolutionary War history. There is a historical marker here that says Revolutionary War Memorial 1930, Veterans Memorial 1999. On this site are interred the remains of 110 soldiers from General Washington's Continental Army wounded at the battles of Brandywine and Germantown. These soldiers were transported to Lititz between December 1777 and August 1778. Hospitalized in the Moravian Brethren's house, they succumbed to their wounds or illnesses and were buried in unmarked graves due to the religious beliefs of the community. To honor their ultimate sacrifice, this memorial was dedicated in 1930. The remains were discovered in 1932 and reinterred here. They were buried without written record of their identities, making them some of America's first unknown soldiers. So, as the historical marker says, right here, right on the other side of these walls, in this little tiny park right here, are the remains of 110 unknown Revolutionary War soldiers, all once buried in a mass grave outside of what was the makeshift Revolutionary War hospital, then eventually found and reburied right here. But that's what makes this a little bit more interesting than just a mass grave, because we've been to mass graves of Revolutionary War soldiers before. That's not such a weird, bizarre thing. That unfortunately happened a lot during the Revolutionary War. They would take these buildings, they would make them into makeshift hospitals until the main hospital in Yellow Springs was built. They would take these buildings, turn them into makeshift hospitals, and when unfortunately men passed away, because a lot of men were passing away at these hospitals, they would take the bodies and they would put them into a mass grave outside of the hospital. But again, what makes it interesting is that those men were lost to time. They weren't quite sure where those men had been buried. They knew it was somewhere kind of in the area. They weren't 100% sure. So they built this little park here and put up this monument here because they thought that this could possibly be the area where those men were buried. Turns out they weren't 100% correct. And in 1932, while digging for a basement, the men's remains were found. So only 2 years after this park and the memorial was dedicated, they actually did end up finding the remains and then exhuming them and burying them here in the park at the memorial that was built for them only 2 years previously. Kind of crazy the way that worked out, and what makes this, in my opinion, a little bit more of a bizarre and interesting and intriguing story than just a mass burial. Weird that only 2 years after this park was dedicated, those men's remains ended up being accidentally found, and they got to be buried in the park that was dedicated to them in the first place. So this here is the original 1930s monument. It says, in memory of 110 soldiers of the Continental Army who died in the Lititz Military Hospital between December 19, 1777 and August 28, 1778, and are buried here, erected by the United States government 1930. But again, in 1930, they did not actually know where the remains of these men were. They just assumed they were buried here, but they were incorrect. But then only 2 years later, the men ended up actually getting buried here on this site. Very interesting how that at the time, for 2 years, at the time, this memorial here was actually technically incorrect. And what's also kind of technically incorrect, if you do some research and look up the dates, the men who were brought here to this hospital weren't necessarily men from the Battle of Brandywine or Germantown, as the historical marker says, because during that time, during December 1777 and August 28th, 1778, that would have been when the men were encamped at Valley Forge. So a lot of historians think that the men who were actually brought here were brought from Valley Forge. Now, don't get me wrong, those men could have been wounded in the battles of Brandywine or Germantown, and then maybe they thought they could overcome their illness, or maybe their wounds weren't too bad. They did not need to be necessarily immediately transported to a hospital, but then over time, maybe their wounds got worse or their illnesses got worse, and they did eventually have to be brought to this makeshift hospital here in Lititz, Pennsylvania. So most likely the men who were brought here weren't brought from those battles. They were brought directly from Valley Forge, which there never was a battle at, but disease was running quite rampant at the encampment. So there probably were a lot of men brought from Valley Forge to the makeshift military hospital here in Lititz. What's also crazy though is the fact that Valley Forge is about a good hour and a half's drive by modern day car. Taking a car like this and driving it to Valley Forge from here, from Lititz, Pennsylvania, will probably take you about an hour and a half. I can't even begin to imagine how long that would take by horse-drawn carriage. Could you imagine you're wounded, you're sick, you're possibly dying, and they put you into the back of a horse-drawn wagon, and they take you all the way out here. A trip that would take an hour and a half by modern day car. How long would that possibly take by horse-drawn carriage? I can't even begin to imagine that. I'm sure the trip was very bumpy, very cold. I mean, we're talking the winter of 1777 into 1778. Those men were probably quite cold, quite uncomfortable, wounded, sick, dying. And they were put into the back of a wagon and taken out here. It probably took hours to get out here. I would not even want to begin to imagine how awful of an ordeal something like that must have been. But this is where the makeshift hospital was, here in Lititz, Pennsylvania, where all those men were brought, and where 110 of them unfortunately did end up passing away and were buried in a mass grave that eventually would be placed right here. So that was the 1930s monument. This one here being the 1999 monument, in grateful recognition to all veterans who preserved the freedom won by America's first veterans that are buried here, 1776, 1999. So this here being the 1999 Veterans Memorial. Pretty nice looking. So 1930s memorial right next to the 1999 memorial. And then right behind him, right back there, is the mass grave of the 110 unknown Revolutionary War soldiers, surrounded very strangely by modern day homes and businesses and whatnot. Kind of weird they maybe didn't preserve more of the land. My assumption is in 1930, when this area was dedicated, I'm sure these buildings were not here. You can tell these are somewhat more modern-ish buildings. But it makes me wonder why the town didn't say, okay, no, this whole area here is one giant park. This is a monument, a historical area, an area dedicated to the memory of the 110 men who were buried here. Maybe we shouldn't build a business. Maybe we shouldn't allow houses to be built. Maybe this should be a much larger park. You would think, but I guess sometimes money talks, and I'm sure money was offered to buy the land, and they allowed it to happen. Why? I don't know. Again, in my opinion, this whole area here should probably be one big park, not a tiny little park for these men, but at least we have something. So right here, right underneath this rhododendron bush, which I'm sure in the spring probably looks amazing with all its pink flowers in bloom, right here, right underneath the bush, are the remains of 110 unknown Revolutionary War soldiers. And I'm going to assume there are probably 110 American flags, one for each soldier. That would be my assumption. I'm not about to count them all, but I'm going to assume, since there are so many, there probably are 110. There's a plaque. It says, at this spot are reinterred the remains of a number of Revolutionary soldiers who died in the military hospital 1777, 1778. The remains were exhumed during building operations at the original burial site on nearby South Locust Street. So again, when they were doing some excavation to put up a new building, and they were digging for the basement, they did stumble upon the remains, the original burial site, the original mass grave of the Revolutionary War soldiers who were buried on the outskirts of town, because due to the religious practices of the town, non-members of the church cannot actually be buried in town, so they had to bury them outside the town. Kind of weird the way that worked, but again, they did find the actual graves in 1932, and they dug them up and they buried them right here, right at the monument that was built to dedicate those men. So pretty interesting. Again, I'm pretty sure there are 110 flags. I'm not about to count every single one of them, but there are quite a few here. So my assumption would be that there are 110 surrounding the bush and surrounding the mass burial site of 110 unknown Revolutionary War soldiers. Again, buried right here, right underneath this bush in Lititz, Pennsylvania. So this actually is a beautiful park, even though it does sit right beside businesses and dumpsters and parking lots and private homes, and right off of a very busy major street that has the continuous sounds of motorcycles and trucks and cars with their windows down, blaring hip-hop music in the middle of winter. It's 40 degrees today. Why anybody would want to have their windows down is beyond me, unless you really want people to hear that cool song you have playing, and the constant drone of airplanes flying overhead in and out of the local airport. With all of that aside, this is a very beautiful park. I love the monuments. They are amazing. The groundskeeping here is awesome. The old stone wall. It is a very, very beautiful park. Again, more of the land could have been preserved. I feel like, there's a road right there, kind of curves up and around. I feel like all the land around here could have been preserved for a much larger park, but like I said, it is what it is. It's still a beautiful park, a fitting park, a nice park dedicated to the men who are buried out here, the unknown 110 Revolutionary War soldiers. So noise pollution and encroachment of businesses and houses aside, it is a very, very beautiful park dedicated to the men who are buried right here, right behind the houses. 110 men, again, buried right here in Lititz, Pennsylvania. It is a nice park. At times, it can be peaceful. when there's not cars driving past, when there's not an airplane flying overhead, when there's not kids or dogs making noise. It is a nice park. Again, you gotta love Lancaster County, and just you gotta love the town of Lititz, Pennsylvania in general. Like I said, there's so much history here. I could honestly probably come back to this town day after day for a good month or more and fill an entire month's worth of videos. There is so much to film here, so much history. Look at this amazing house, this building that sits right next to the mass grave. This is awesome, all built out of wood and plaster. It says Albert Glatz Tobacco Shop, circa 1765. First tobacconist in Rome, Lititz, Pennsylvania, relocated to the site in 1868. So this building right here was built circa 1765. That is crazy that this building still exists. It says preserved in 2010 for the people in Lancaster County, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the United States of America. That is too awesome. Amazing that something like this still exists and that is still here for people to see. I really do love this area. I really do love this town. I love the history. There's another historical marker right over there that talks about the Moravian German Haus. Is that what that says? I believe the church and school. Yeah, the church, parsonage, and school stood for 125 years. So really interesting, all the history in this area and of this area, and even the Revolutionary War history of this area. The whole Lancaster County area has a ton of Revolutionary War history, and I definitely want to visit some more of that over time. The real reason why we came out here today was to see the mass grave of 110 Revolutionary War soldiers and to pay our respects to those soldiers. All right, and with the sound of the very loud motorcycle also blaring its music, I think we're going to bring an end to this video. I am freezing right now, but again, really wanted to come out here, see this mass grave of 110 Revolutionary War soldiers buried here in Lititz, Pennsylvania. Amazing, beautiful park for some amazing, awesome men. But again, I am freezing, so we're gonna end the video. Even though in the sun, it doesn't feel too bad. The very large trees, without any foliage, but still providing quite a lot of shade, is making it quite chilly. But all right, guys, that's gonna do it. So as always, thank you all so much for checking out this video. Be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check down below for links to Patreon. If you guys do become a patron, I will send you a postcard every single month from the road. Also check down below for a link to Spreadshirt, where you can grab yourself retro rest stop t-shirts. Proceeds, both from Spreadshirt and from Patreon, do help support the show, and they do keep the show going, so I really do appreciate it. Let's take one last look at the mass grave of 110 Revolutionary War soldiers buried right here, 1932. Men from 1777, men who fought during 1777 into 1778. Some of them probably fighting from the beginning, from 1776, buried right here. Men who were brought from Valley Forge to Lititz, to the hospital, the makeshift hospital, who unfortunately passed away. Those men buried in a mass grave and then found in 1932 and buried right here. One last shot. All right, guys, so if you watch this video all the way until the very end, let's say hashtag thank you for your service, because I am thankful to the service of these men right here, these men who helped preserve and to build, to create this country of the United States of America. So hashtag thank you for your service. But all right, guys, again, that's going to do it. I am officially freezing happy. I came out here happy. I finally got to see this. I've known about this for a while now. Been wanting to get out here. Even though I cannot feel my, get noise pollution, even though I cannot feel my hands at the moment, I'm going to say it was absolutely worth it. So again, guys, that's going to do it. Like I said, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you do hit that subscribe button or you are subscribed, then I will see you guys in the next video, hopefully from somewhere inside or somewhere, at least on a much warmer day. Again, Lititz, Pennsylvania, the grave of 110 unknown Revolutionary War soldiers right here. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye. Hold on, wait a minute. We're not quite done yet. I had to drive 2 minutes down the road to see this, to see the original building used as the makeshift Revolutionary War hospital during 1777 into 1778. We are here at the Lititz Moravian congregation. Over there is the sister's house, and over here is the brother's house. And this right here is the building that was used as the makeshift Revolutionary War hospital. Look at that. The fact that you can still come out here and see this, the fact that this still stands, that is amazing. Look at the old water pump that's out here. How cool is that? I had to drive down the road to check this out. There's a plaque over here that says, "In memory of the brave soldiers of the Continental Army who died in this building when it was used by order of General Washington as a military hospital from December 19, 1777 to August 28, 1778. This tablet is erected by the Lititz Moravian congregation." Again, how awesome is it that this still stands? You can go down the road, see the mass grave of the 110 men who did die right here, right inside this building. And then you can drive down the road 2 minutes and see the building those men passed away in. The original 1777, 1778 makeshift Revolutionary War hospital right here. Just think of all those men sick, wounded, dying, and 110 of them who did end up sadly passing away and are now buried 2 minutes in the park right down the road. Pretty crazy. Awesome that this still exists though. But all right, guys, again, with that, we are done. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. All right. That is too cool. All right, see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.